Hi guys, and welcome to the Water Matters podcast. My name's Luke, and this is Jake, and this is episode 15 of the series. For context, as some of you may or may not know, we are effectively the team that put together the episodes, so we make sure everything gets recorded and the lights are on, and then we do the editing with it. And so today's episode is going to be a bit different because we're going to talk about some of our older content, specifically a few of our first episodes. So Jake's going to take us through it and talk you through what this episode is going to all be about.
So yeah, this episode is essentially just going to serve as more of a recap on some of our old content. Like Luke mentioned, the first few episodes. We know that there are a few people here that probably have joined later into the lifespan of Water Matters, and there's a lot of really pressing topics there and trends that are still important to this day that we wanted to make sure were known and just really keep that conversation going. So yeah, that's essentially what we're going to get into and just cover really in this episode. And to start with, we're actually looking at the very first episode of Water Matters.
Yeah, no, of course. First episode that was filmed probably about 6 months ago now, obviously during the winter. Now it's the summer, even more relevant now than it was back then. And a lot of the topics spoken about in that episode, very, very relevant.
More specifically, the notion that Britain is too wet. And if you're a UK citizen, you probably also agree with this and complain about this a lot. But in reality, the UK actually gets around the same amount of rainfall as South Sudan, as said by Tim, one of our recurring guests on the podcast, which I thought is just incredibly interesting and yeah, really relevant right now with our droughts. So yeah, let's see what they say.
One stat was that England had and has the same average rainfall as South Sudan. So it rains a lot less than we think. And that blew my mind. Couldn't believe that.
Hard to believe on a day like today.
Yeah, exactly. We're on a rainy day today. And two was a piece of work by NASA with a satellite mission that found out that almost 2/3 of the world's major aquifers, so aquifers being the groundwater beneath our feet, there's more groundwater than there is surface water by quite a large amount, but 2/3 of the world's major aquifers are receding. They're running out of water faster than they're being replenished, and that's down to human overconsumption. So there's a global issue, there's a local issue, there's human mismanagement, there's climate change. It all comes together into, I guess perfect storm is a very cliched term, but it kind of is. It does rain very frequently in England. So this causes us to think of ourselves as a very wet nation. How could we possibly have a water problem? However, there's a difference between raining frequently and raining heavily. Mm-hmm. It rains often in England. So any month it could rain, any day it could rain. Most other countries have, relatively dry summers and wet winters. We have the possibility of being wet all year round. But because we are grey and drizzly a lot, we have our own self-image and a global image of being a really wet, rainy country. We're kind of a damp country. Grey and drizzle doesn't add up to much in the rain gauge. It doesn't fill up reservoirs. And this is the issue that water companies have.
So quite a shocking clip there. And I don't know about you guys, but I personally just did not think that it would be similar to South Sudan at all. You see a lot of puddles constantly out there, a lot of drizzle. We even had a little bit of rain this weekend. So quite a shocking clip.
And yeah, I think that's a really good point. One thing that I definitely picked up on, especially in those first original episodes, was getting a good understanding of how not great the UK is at actually holding the water that we have. Even when it does rain, we don't have that much infrastructure to sort of hold everything together. So hence why every couple of years we have those hosepipe bans. And it's really quite annoying for everyone having dead gardens, but it happens. And definitely this year, as it's sunny right now in June, I can see dead grass everywhere. Very unfortunate, but it is what it is. And definitely one of the best things I learned about in the first couple of episodes.
And that actually leads on to our second topic, also from episode 1, and that is Day Zero. Now, you might not be that familiar with this term. I personally wasn't until I watched episode 1, but it's something that came from Cape Town, and Tim talks about it more here.
Day Zero was a term coined in Cape Town in 2017 because Cape Town, South Africa, were coming very close to running out of water. So there'd been a 2-year drought. Cape Town is normally one of the rainier parts of South Africa. 2-year drought was unexpected and unusual. But if that kept happening, they would soon run out of water in the reservoirs. So day zero was essentially coined as a term for if consumption levels remain the same and reservoir levels kept going down. I think they calculated it at, I think it was 13.5% capacity in the reservoirs. If it went below 13.5%, they would have to turn the taps off to the city, a city of 8+ million people. So day zero was actually kind of a PR term coined by the local authorities to say, listen, we are going to run out of water. We've got to use less water. We've worked out that this will happen in April. And I think they coined the term around kind of October, November.
Roughly how long ago was this? Do you remember?
Yeah, so 2017 was when they started the messaging. April 2018 was a date within, I forget exactly which, like April the 15th or something, was coined, was going to be day zero. Yeah. Now, what would happen on day zero would be all the taps would be turned off and people would have to queue at standpipes for their water. Not that many standpipes as well. It's a long queues, chaos. The reason why they messaged it so early on was to get people to actually act. So they asked people to use initially 75 litres per person per day. Then it went down to 50 litres per person. Now that might sound a lot if we think about it as drinking water, but actually water that you use, we use a lot more than 50 litres per day. One wash cycle on your washing machine is going to use more than 50 litres. Even on an eco setting, 50 is about the best you get. So you can picture that suddenly the population were having to use the laundry a lot less, shower for 2 minutes maximum at a time. People got used to showering with buckets underneath them or trays underneath them so they could reuse that water. And the messaging was actually very successful. So individual water use was greatly reduced.
Over what kind of period of time? I'm imagining, or I'm wanting people to be able to imagine, because if, that's Cape Town, not that different in size and number of people to London, perhaps, like to give it some context. How many months did the occupants have that time to prepare or change their behaviour in the lead up to that?
It was about 4 months, I'd say, maybe 5. But as I say, it's off the back of a 2-year drought. So people were already getting used
They're
to
aware.
Water getting lower, but it wasn't really affecting them. You could still turn the tap on. But the idea that you could no longer turn the tap on, that changes people's perspective.
Yes.
So in the end, it got close to April. People's water use was going down, but so is the reservoir levels because it's still not raining. You need rain to top up your reservoirs, no matter how little you use. But in the end, the rain arrived about 2 weeks before that day zero. So the reservoirs just managed to top back up, and they've been okay ever since. Interestingly, Cape Townians' water use has remained lower than previously ever since.
So behaviour did change.
Behaviour change does become ingrained.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting then is that since then, day zero has kind of become a known term for any city that is coming close to running out of water. And so Sao Paulo, Brazil, one of the world's mega cities, almost ran out of water twice this past decade, just avoided it. Chennai, one of India's largest cities, did have a day zero. That was summer 2019. A city that used to be famous for its wetlands dried out completely. Reservoir levels, we're not talking about 13% here, just zero, completely dried mud. So that did reach day zero, which did mean no water in the taps, which meant water tankers coming around the streets, chaotic street scenes, people trying to get water. Yeah. So it's not a pleasant situation. But the examples I gave maybe sound quite far away from England. London actually came very close to its own day zero in 2012. So I spoke to a couple of Thames water managers who admitted that and said, we were days away from standpipes in summer 2012.
Wow.
That's the Olympic year as well for London.
Yeah.
So can you imagine?
Yeah.
I don't know what they'd have done for the swimming competitions.
That's crazy.
But we came very close. So London, again, the same Thames water manager told me, only has 90 days of water storage at any one time. So we have relatively few reservoirs per head of population in this country. Globally, we're near the bottom of that list. So we have very little water storage. Any long drought gets water companies very scared in England because we don't have that much storage. So the situation is really precarious, and I don't think a lot of people realise it.
And yeah, I think that's what's utterly insane. The fact that we were that close in London to having to close off water basically is utterly, well, amazing and surprising. And actually, only happening in 2012 wasn't that long ago. Hopefully it's got better, but I suspect we're probably in a similar position.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, we had the Olympics too then, so
Good point.
How scary would that have been if we had the Olympics and we didn't have water to give to the athletes or anything? So
good point.
Yeah, and then also obviously coming off of that with Thames Water telling us that we only have 90 days of water storage. That's not much at all. That's 3 months of water storage, and then we're gone, and then the taps are off until who knows when. So yeah, a really pressing issue, and I just think something that everyone should really be aware of. I think it really ties into the whole, I don't know about you, but I don't really think about the water I use day to day.
No, agreed. I don't. And actually, that's something I have found interesting working on this podcast, is learning so much more about it. And the obvious one for me, for example, is I have the longest showers in the world. And now I'm definitely a lot more aware, I have to admit, that I probably shouldn't be sat in the shower for 20 minutes. And, I'm thinking about how much water I'm wasting every day. And it definitely does make me a lot more aware, which is the whole point of this podcast. That's the whole point.
Exactly. And coming off of day zero, something on the other end of the spectrum, but just as disastrous, is flooding. We all know about flooding. We've all seen it. It happens a few times a year, and people might not think it's that important, but it is.
Reason being, of course, because our sewer systems are so ancient. Unfortunately, this is just the reality we're in. I think we all kind of know this at this point, but our sewer systems just always seem to have issues. Water's coming out of everywhere all the time, and they just simply cannot handle the amount of rainfall we get, especially during the winter. And it's an issue. We're all very aware of it. And unfortunately, with time, I think it's probably just going to get worse until we do something about it.
Indeed, and this is one of the topics that they have covered probably throughout multiple episodes, including this clip right here.
When it falls. So our system in this country, we're speaking in England, is largely a Victorian designed water system that's designed to, straighten your waterways, drain farmland, get stormwater out to sea as quickly as possible. In a water scarcity situation, again, remember, we're yo-yoing between the two. That's the opposite of what you want to do. You actually want that water to have a chance to seep down into the aquifers, so that when you do have your inevitable drought, you've got water in the aquifers that can come up through wells and pumps and so on. If you've disconnected all your rivers and all your fields from the aquifers beneath, then that water is being channeled off to sea. Increasingly, we're seeing those floods, also flooding, towns and habitations before it goes out to sea. We're losing all that water. Also, picture it in a city or a town. You've got all that asphalt, all the roads, all the car parks, nowhere for that water to go. It hits and then goes out. Yeah. Finds eventually drainage and ditches, heads back out to sea.
Yeah,
that's the system we have. It's just not the system we need anymore. It's in fact the exact opposite. We need to be holding on to that water, letting it filter down. Can't we just bank all that flood water then? To be honest, that's a big part of. We could spend many a podcast on that. So yes, we do need to. It's also very hard. Our current water systems aren't very well designed to do it. So to get into those details, when there's heavy flood events, such as the recent hurricanes, such as the huge rainfall events that cause landslides and so on,
even such as the earlier this month, like with that one, because that was a lot of rain.
Yes, to an extent that too.
Yeah.
It's hard to capture that water. So too much water from a water supply or water management perspective is just as hard as too little, because your infrastructure is overwhelmed. Water treatment plants can be flooded, reservoirs can overrun, whole dams can fail.
Yeah.
I mean, again, another huge issue, dam failure. So most dams were built in the mid 20th century for a 50-year time frame. Most are over that time frame. Most dams, and we've seen dam failures in the US recently. We saw huge dam failures in Libya a couple of years ago with extreme rainfall events. So most of our water infrastructure is overwhelmed by heavy rainfall. It's not kind of welcoming it as a wonderful moment to replenish.
No.
In this country, we've yet to see those huge extremes, but when there are heavy rainfall events, reservoirs typically close off their levees because you're getting a lot of nutrients, you're getting a lot of just mud runoff from fields, you're also getting chemical runoff from, airports or roads. So that heavy rainfall event water is typically bad water, or at least hard to treat water. So water companies, again, are not kind of hugely welcoming of heavy rainfall events. They would rather, in an ideal world, have little and often rainfall.
So floods and droughts are both things that the UK goes through, and quite frequently. Now, in episode 2, Matt speaks more about this to Catherine and just sort of talks about how we'll always have the wettest month of the year followed by the driest month of the year. It's crazy. It's all over the place. What is there that we can do about it, and what needs to be done about it?
I think one very interesting thing about this, and we've already had it a couple of times now as we record these episodes, is we're always referring to what the weather is doing real time. So and it's already been a mixture because, to your point, yes, it's raining now. I think episode 1, it was absolutely throwing it down. But at times, and something we recorded the other day, lovely sunny day. I think we have both a water scarcity issue and an issue of flooding and just too much rainwater, and so the reality is it's an issue of both sides of that same coin. So we'll talk about both parts of it because there is, both are very, very relevant. If you haven't got enough water, or we get to what Tim described as day 0 on the first episode, which is when cities and large kind of town cities literally run out of water, and you go to turn the tap on and there's just none there, and there'll be standpipes on the corner of the streets and all that sort of stuff, and you'll just be allocated a certain amount that you can go and collect and use. That extreme has come close in many places, including London in 2012, which was a bit of a shocking statistic from that Tim shares in his book and also mentioned in the last episode. But you've got that extreme, and then you've got the extremes of flooding and the fact that because storms are getting more extreme, and anyone that's has to deal with the devastation of a flood will know that is just as bad, if not worse than the thought of running out of water. So it really is both those things. Anyone listening that has experienced either one of them would understand why this is such an important topic and subject. And perhaps, this is all part of getting to step 2, where people do talk more about it. There's not many people that share their own experiences of, floods or what they've had to deal with. And so through giving them this kind of platform and us focusing on it, that's the goal really, is to get people to talk about both the not having enough, and what might happen if that becomes the case, certainly in the next 10 years or so, or in dealing with floods and the damage that causes and that sort of stuff, which is also very real for some people.
And so, like Matt said in the clip, I mean, clearly we are not the best, again, at holding water. If we're getting loads of rain in those wet months, it's going into the sewer systems, it's flooding them, and then it's just being released back into the wild, and we're not actually capturing it. And it's quite unfortunate that we're in a weird position where we could have enough water, but we're just not utilising it.
But it's not all doom and gloom, as going back to episode 3, we actually look at some more hopeful content that we spoke about, including rainwater harvesting, SUDS, and smart systems, all decentralised solutions that can really help us hold on to as much rainwater as possible while taking care of the nature around us.
Rivers naturally should flood. There's a dry part of the year, there's a flood part of the year. Mm-hmm. They go out onto the floodplains. That water filters down into the aquifers beneath. We then have that water to use. A lot of our water companies pump water from below. We picture reservoirs as our only way of getting water. It's not. Nationally, I think it's roughly about 50% surface water, 50% below surface water. That's the way to hold on to it. You let it seep down. In towns and cities, that means more green spaces, more green roofs, pervious pavements, areas for that water to filter down. It's a known way of doing this. I mean, China were really big on it. They've got a sponge cities movement of replacing a lot of urban asphalt and so on with greenery to let water filtrate down. But that is also a flood management mechanism. So it's both you're storing some water for your summer drought, but it's also flood management because it's not just funneling it all down the same systems, canalized rivers, speeding up, flooding towns downstream. If you slow that water down and give that water somewhere to go through being able to seep down into the aquifer, it's both a flood management mechanism and it's a drought management mechanism.
Yeah.
So one of my favourite examples is the town of Pickering in North Yorkshire. So I forget what river it is, but the river there floods every year. It floods all the towns in North Yorkshire, floods York too. But Pickering always used to get especially badly flooded. So the town planned a £20 million flood defence wall. But it's basically just concrete walls.
Yeah.
But it's going to cost 20 million. It's a small town. That's quite a lot
Just
of money.
to protect this one town.
Yeah.
I'm funny.
But, in terms of damage, that probably does make economic sense, right, to actually do it. I forget who instigated it, but in conversation with a number of conservation charities and the Environment Agency, they decided to do a £2 million solution, so a tenth of the price, to renaturalise the river upstream from them. So in the fields and valleys, reconnecting it to its floodplain and letting it meander. Yeah. So also you can picture if you've got a straight river or a meandered river, that's actually slower, taking longer to get down. They did all this work. Leaky dams as well, which is kind of putting logs and fallen trees across the river, so kind of mimicking how a river would look in a natural state. Anyway, the following year, so this is going back to 2015. It's a fairly well-known case study by this point. The following year, same floods happened. All the North Yorkshire towns flooded. Pickering was fine. So that worked. Yeah. And it still works. Yeah. Still the town's main flood defence.
And so, hopefully the government will continue to add solutions like this into our cities and towns because, clearly we absolutely need it.
And not only that, the individual can also do a lot to hold on to as much rainwater as possible, especially in these summer months that we've got coming up, including but not limited to devices such as water butts, rainwater harvesters, both provided by Graph UK.
Of course.
Not saying you have to go from us, but we do supply water solutions, of course, and many other things that you can use in your garden day to day, help reduce the use of your mains water too, help save on those water bills at the same time as having a sustainable garden and general home.
And also, I'll mention it now, actually, we do have some little timers that you can put in your showers downstairs. I've started using mine, I have to admit. I'm pleased that I'm starting to use it, which is a 4-minute timer, just to keep you aware so you don't have those super long showers. So if you come down to Graph headquarters at any point, just pick one up there in reception downstairs and, hopefully it will help out. Just an extra little thing we've got downstairs for you.
So we've covered the problems, the causes, and the solutions to the problems when it comes to rainfall, not just in the UK, but across the world, whether that be flooding or droughts, sewer systems, anything really. But now it's time to talk about action and what action we can do. And that's really what Water Matters is trying to make people aware of.
And it was really after reading Tim's book, The Last Drop, and then just being inspired really in terms of spreading the sort of, raising the subject of water management, bringing it to the surface more, because even in our day-to-day business, not enough people talk about the challenges that we face. Water is still, certainly in the UK, incredibly cheap and just taken for granted. And as Tim and I talked about on the last episode, and I'm sure will be a recurring theme on future episodes, it's a problem that's getting worse. It's a crisis that is sort of waiting to happen. And so, yeah, the idea was let's bring it back in a few different forms. So we've got the written email newsletter that people can just simply subscribe to and read to stay up to date with what's happening. And then we've got this podcast, which will be sharing a new episode every 2 weeks, which will be a mixture of us talking to people within the industry, people like Tim that have a lot of stories to share about the water sort of situation, both in the UK and in other areas around the world. And our goal is really a 3-step process. So we want really, step 1 is for people to start listening and talking. Just listening, reading, kind of educating themselves about what is the situation with water management, firstly in the UK, but also kind of more globally. Step 2 would then be to start talking to other people about it. So to make sure that people are discussing the challenge, discussing the issues, and the real sort of real-time, real-life scenarios, so that people are thinking about it and talking about it amongst themselves. And then step 3 would be to turn that talking into action. So we're very fortunate. We deal with a lot of customers who take some ownership of their own water use, people that install water butts, people that install rainwater harvesting systems, people that design and install and manage surface water attenuation tanks, as well as sewage treatment as well. So people that are actually kind of walking the talk, if you like, making changes in their own life to help with the water situation, which ultimately is what we all need to do if we're going to be, if we're going to kind of find our way to a better place in the future, whereby we either don't run out or it doesn't, we need to somehow sort of, it's only through behavioral change and sort of better management of water that we will prevent a kind of water crisis in however long's time.
So ultimately, that's what Water Matters has been about from the beginning. Building this community, getting people to talk about it, the importance of actually paying attention to our water because it's so important. Plan is to do quite a lot more over the next couple of months. We've got some big plans in place. One of the exciting things that we're introducing, I'm going to get Jake to talk about.
Yes, and that is the first Water Matters yearbook. It's something we've been carefully working on behind the scenes for a while now. It's a global report that brings together the biggest water trends, challenges, and innovations from around the world. From flooding and droughts to policy changes and community solutions, it paints a clear picture of where we are now and where we need to go.
So we'll be releasing the first edition very soon. And then the plan is to then release them on World Water Day every 22nd of March, so next year as well. So we're really excited to see what everyone thinks. A lot of work's gone into it, and we're excited to share it as well.
Yeah, it's something that we felt was missing, and so we decided to create it. I mean, we're Water Matters after all, so kind of makes sense. It's going to hopefully make a real impact.
So there you go. That was our recap episode, obviously covering 6 really important topics there from previous episodes. Obviously, the full episode links will be in the description, and we've added which episode is which in the video as well. So if you wanted to check the full episodes out, they're all there for you.
We thought that this recap episode was really important as we are, 15 episodes in now. So whether you're new or old, we just want to make sure that you remember exactly what it is that we've spoken about. And again, these are all topics that are still just as relevant now as they were when we said it all those months ago. And of course, we are going to continue talking about water for the future. So please feel free to subscribe and add us on any of the podcast platforms that you listen on if you haven't already. We will see you very shortly.
Thanks very much. Catch you soon.